Oh, all right. Good morning. All right. First talk, last day. You guys are a special crowd. Thanks for coming out. Feel free to raise your hands. I want to keep this interactive, as a small group. But my name, if guys don't know me, my name is Raymond Cheng. For the better part of last year, I've been the tech lead at the Hypersource Foundation, where we've been building on-chain impact certificates. And today, what I want to talk about is some follow-on work that we've been doing, particularly in the space of impact measurement. And we think that's going to be a big part of the bigger impact funding ecosystem moving forward. So I'm going to be talking predominantly about measurement today, but if you want to talk more about how this all fits into impact markets, broader impact funding, impact evaluators, feel free to find me afterwards as well. So the bottom line is that impact funding basically already exists today. We have it in roughly unstructured ways, but we deploy a lot of capital today. And with Open Source Observer, what we want to do is be able to help impact economies measure the impact of their open source contributions to the growth and adoption of their platform. We're going to start with crypto networks because we're deploying obvious capital today in very explicit ways. But I think a lot of the methodologies that we're producing, we have an ambition to go well beyond just crypto networks. You can think of the recent growth and trajectory of open source AI ML. You can think about all the innovation that's happened in open source DevOps tooling or security and privacy. Open source software really does underpin a lot of our economy today. And I think a lot of these techniques can be equally applicable in all of those. But let's start with crypto networks. Every crypto network today is a distinct internet economy. It consists of you and I, developers, active users, governance participants, and strategic investing is going to be critical to the success of any crypto network. And when I say strategic investing, I want to think about this holistically. I don't want to just talk about the grants and prizes and bounties that we do today. That includes all of the headcount that L1s and L2s are putting, including at companies like Protocol Labs. The problem is, and I don't know if you guys will disagree with this, is that our current approach to bootstrapping economic activity is a little bit of a pay and pray situation today. We don't really have the right metrics. We don't really know what are the metrics that are driving the most growth. And I'd question to ask, how many foundations today really are measuring developer retention? How many foundations today are seeing whether or not this dollar is leading to actual sustained growth or just a temporary blip in traffic? We want to be able to help ecosystem funds and foundations make better, smarting funding allocation decisions today. And from our perspective, we view impact optimization as effectively an optimization loop. It's effectively a reinforcement learning problem. We have human agents, not AI agents, but by making the right data available, we want to help agents design funding programs, deploy capital in a way that maximizes their reward function, their strategic advantage in growing their ecosystem. One of the things that's great and a little bit comforting, even in a bear market, is to know that we're still sitting on a lot of capital. Regardless of which L1, L2 ecosystem you're talking about, we're still deploying at least likely millions of dollars a year when it comes to budget. And we're sitting on about, by some estimates, $30 billion worth in treasuries and funds that we expect to be deployed, not all at once, but over time, and hopefully to continue growing this ecosystem. And we expect the vast majority of that money is going to go towards pushing this graph up and to the right. It seems like the most of L1s, L2s are thinking about how to bring new developers, but not just new developers that stick around, active developers, that are pushing the dot to the right here, where clearly Ethereum is the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room, and that we believe that the developers are going to be the ones that bring sustained activity in active addresses and actual engagement on the network. Now, historically, I don't know that we've been doing that great of a job. You might disagree with these exact figures. By some estimates, we really only have about 21,000 active engaged developers in the ecosystem, like across all of crypto. And if you compare that to the amount of money that we've actually deployed out there today, it doesn't look that great in terms of whether or not we're doing a great job. And I think we should do a better job. I think we should be measuring this. And I think it's important for us to think about how do we define what return on investment looks like. It's not purely a cash flow business like you would expect in a traditional corporation, but there is some notion of returns that we care about, and we should be measuring it. And I think we could be doing a lot better than we are today. The fundamental thesis of a tool like Open Source Observer is that better visibility is going to lead to better funding allocations, better funding decisions, more efficient markets. Much like how business intelligence tools have completely changed how markets work in traditional capital markets today, we believe that in the open source economy, there's equal potential to create much better and efficient markets for sustaining public goods. So Open Source Observer is something that we've been building. It's also an open source product. We're product people, but all of this is out in the public good. We're developing this currently within the Hypersource Foundation, but we'll see where that goes when it all gets nucleated. We're currently partnering with the Optimism community. And let me jump a couple slides ahead, actually. We know that analytics tools already exist today. And we want to leverage all of that. We're an open source product. We want to leverage any tool today that already does, say, GitHub activity. So we've been in talks with folks from, for example, the Linux Chaos community, who's been doing a lot of that. We know that there are a number of analytics tools today that do software supply chain, particularly in software bill of materials. So companies like Tidelift, there's Ecosystems and Andrew Nesbitt, there's Open Source Insights. We want to leverage all of that dependency data, supply chain data. There's also plenty of companies that do both proprietary and open source blockchain analytics. We want to leverage all of that. One of the things that we are most excited about, and we believe that one of the reasons why the Optimism community is so excited, is that I don't know that there's been a tool that really pushes the boundary of understanding business intelligence that crosses all of these layers. I want to understand, when you tie this to grant data, when you tie this to money that's going into an ecosystem, how is that flow of value from a grant to projects building on-chain activity, projects building software, to where that sits in your dependency tree and where that sits in terms of the software supply chain, all the way out to user analytics and retained users in your network. We want to see us bridge analytics all the way across these layers. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be really interesting. It's something that we've been building in partnership with our friends at Optimism, and we're hoping to launch this by, I guess, the end of next month now, when we start with the Retro PGF3 round. While we're starting with Optimism and Filecoin, we expect every L1, L2 needs a tool like Open Source Observer today. Every program has some mechanism for delivering grants. I think everybody has this, at least informally, some notion of this feedback loop where grants are feeding into developers, developers are bringing the applications and the users, which helps drive value to the token economy. We want to start with top tier L1s and L2s, expanding out to other protocols in the near future. But I think our ambitions are actually much greater than that. I think it's undeniable the importance of open source software. By some estimates, there's been a recent study that showed that it was something around like 99% of companies use some form of open source. That's not actually that surprising. One thing that might be a little bit surprising is that I think it's close to 76% of lines of code shipped are actually lines of code that are sitting in your dependency tree that you never actually wrote yourself. So if you think about it from that perspective, open source software really is the foundation. It really is the bedrock of our entire economy. If software is eating the world, then open source is the foundation of it. And we want to be able to bring those types of insights and better investments to help bring society forward. So yeah, that's the main 10,000 foot view. I'll stop for some questions if you guys want to chat about it now, but I'm also available all day if you guys want to chat more.
And if you do have questions, please just signal me first so I can run you a microphone. We want to make sure your questions are recorded.
So since we're in the governance track, I'll start off by saying that one of the things that people often talk about in governance is how to measure the impact of particular developers and weight their potential governance rights according to their contributions to the community. does your system only focus on things at the project level, or does it allow that sort of rewarding of individual contributions by individual people?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So I think as of right now, we're mostly focusing at the project granularity because our primary focus right now is on, as I mentioned, kind of cross-cutting layers. So for example, one of the things that we want to do with Optimism is have a good sense of, these libraries are used by these many different projects and they have this many instantiations of this contract on chain, and that's driving this amount of activity with this many users. And then, if you have a good sense of where you actually sit in the value chain, then we can give funding to these projects, and then internally they probably have their own mechanisms for actually, paying developers, and every company has a slightly different, setup for how compensation is done. So we're not, as of right now, not super opinionated about for within a particular project how to reward a contributor. We're mostly thinking right now where you sit in the value chain.
Is it possible for people to write their own reports on top of what you've built?
Yeah. So, we're obviously big open source enthusiasts, and it would be kind of silly if we came out here and wanted to sell you a proprietary product. And I think one of the things that seems really clear as we were working with foundations is that, this has to be done in a very open way. So all of the code is open source on GitHub. You can follow us in our activity. All of the data is going to be available in a variety of different ways. We plan on having an API. We're still building that. But also, subject to terms of service of where we're getting this data, as much as possible, be able to give people data dumps, raw access to the database, et cetera. We think of this as a business intelligence tool, and we actually ourselves use all sorts of different business intelligence tools. Because it's all just built on top of a Postgres database effectively, we, even internally to our efforts, we use Tableau, and, we can connect all sorts of different visualizations on it. We want to make it as flexible as possible for anybody to leverage the data. One of the values that I think we provide is a standard schema to measure effectively time series event data across not just GitHub activity, but also supply chain, user analytics, and funding data. If we can bring that all together in one place, I think we're going to be able to see some really interesting stuff.
Thanks for kicking
All
us
right,
off,
thank you.
Raymond.